I've ridden over 200 different roller coasters in my lifetime, and during that I was bound to be disappointed by some here and there. I tend to try and not think negatively about coasters too much, and thus wasn't able to come up with too many that legitimately disappointed me. But alas, there are a few that left me feeling pretty underwhelmed. And don't worry, we won't stay negative for too long. I'll be making a video that's the inverse of this soon, talking about the roller coasters that surprised me. And while we're here, let me know which coasters disappointed you in the comments below. Alright, let's get into it. These are the top 10 most disappointing coasters that I've ever ridden. Before kicking off the top 10, let me give a couple of honorable, or I suppose dishonorable mentions. My last ride on Diamondback at Kings Island in May of this year was very mediocre, with the airtime not hitting all that much. I chalk this up to it being a morning ride, and I know this is supposed to be a top tier hyper, and I've gotten many good rides on it in the past, so I won't let that one ride punish it too much. I had heard some really good things about flying turns at Knoebels, and in turn I built it up in my head to be a little more than I think I should have. I mistakenly expected it to be much more thrilling than it was, and I came off feeling a little disappointed in that sense. However, once you do get rid of the expectations, it's quite a fun and unique ride experience that is a must-do at Knoebels. Alright, now on to the top 10. Just making the cut is Kentucky Flyer at Kentucky Kingdom. This is of course not the craziest ride ever, being Gravity Group's family coaster model, but leading up to my first visit to the park in 2021, I've been told multiple times that this was a smooth ride that gave some solid airtime and was the better of the two Woodies in the park. I ended up coming off of it thinking it was a bit rough and lacked any of that airtime, and I ended up preferring the Dinwoody Thunder Run, now known as Woodland Run, over this. I admittedly only got one ride on Kentucky Flyer and haven't been able to get back to the park since then, so I'll need to give it another shot soon. Number 9 is Viper at Six Flags Great America. Now let me start off by saying that I did enjoy my two rides on this, but unfortunately it was yet another Woody whose airtime just didn't live up to the hype. I had heard that there's a lot of good airtime on this coaster, and while there were a few good pops, it felt like it was lacking given the great things I've heard. Now, this is still a good ride, as the airtime it does have is pretty good, and it's overall one of the smoother wooden coasters that I've ridden. The lap bars on it also gave me a good amount of room to make for a comfortable ride, allowing me to experience the forces to their fullest. I definitely look forward to giving this another shot next time I'm at Great America. At number 8 we have Jersey Devil Coaster at Six Flags Great Adventure. This large-scale single-rail coaster is easily the worst RMC that I've ever ridden. It was a really fun layout with some nice airtime moments along with that zero-G stall, but the restraints on this are just some of the worst that I've ever experienced. During my one ride, I sat in the front row, and I don't know what it is, but those harnesses were jabbing into my legs like it was trying to cut them off. Because of this, any airtime moment that would have otherwise been pretty good was just super painful throwing me into that bar. The only bearable part of the ride was that zero-G stall, which was an amazing moment but just couldn't make up for everything else. I had a similar experience with my first ride on Wonder Woman Flight of Courage at Six Flags Magic Mountain and ended up getting a less painful ride the next day, so when I go back to Great Adventure I'll have to give this one another chance. Either way though, I really hope that they alter the restraints on these someday. Number 7 is Hydra the Revenge at Dorney Park. For a while, I had heard that this was one of the best B&M floorless coasters out there, but I just didn't find that to be the case. This coaster is a bit unique in that it has that JoJo roll out of the station and has some of its elements, particularly the Cobra roll, profiled in an odd manner different than others. Some people seem to like that, but I found it to make the inversions less forceful and have less whip, which is a major downside in my eyes for a floorless coaster. It does have some redeeming factors, like that JoJo roll being a great way to start the ride and the first drop giving you some airtime, but at the end of the day, it's just one of the weaker floorless coasters in my eyes. Number 6 seems to be one of the most popular coasters among the general public, and that's Banshee at Kings Island. This is a good ride. It's fast, smooth, intense, a long ride, and recently became a top 50 coaster for me. However, I still think that it's a bit overhyped in the big picture. A lot of people put this right up there with Montu for the title of Best Invert. However, I personally have Banshee a bit lower than that, being fairly well below both Montu and Raptor. While I can appreciate the speed, this coaster lacks the whip that other inverts have, which is my favorite sensation to experience on this particular ride model. I've only gotten 2 rides on Banshee, one in 2023 and the other this year, and both times I came off thinking that it lacked whip on its inversions that an invert should have. Again, I'll give credit where credit is due. It has the best first drop and sense of speed of all the inverts I've ridden, but it's just not anywhere close to my favorite. Number 5 is the now defunct Nighthawk at Carowinds. When I was a kid, way back in 2011, I went to Six Flags America and rode Batwing and came off loving it. Through the years, I didn't retain much memory of it except for the fact that I really enjoyed it. So when I made my first trip to Carowinds in 2021, I was really excited to ride the other Flying Dutchman that was in operation. However, I came off my one ride on Nighthawk thinking it was the second worst coaster I'd ever ridden, only being beaten out by T3. It was so rough and uncomfortable that I wasn't able to enjoy it at all, and it gave me a very bad impression of the Vekoma Flying Dutchmans for a few years. Luckily, I got to make another visit to Six Flags America this year before they shut down for good and get another ride on Batwing. That one was running amazing and had me remembering why I liked it so much as a kid, and it even managed to take a slot in my top 50. This was a model of how good a Flying Dutchman can be, and it's really sad to see that Nighthawk was running as bad as it was in its final years. Number 4 is the second RMC on this list, Twisted Colossus at Six Flags Magic Mountain. I had some pretty high hopes for this based on the things I'd heard before getting to Magic Mountain in 2024. Unfortunately, when all was said and done, I have this ranked the lowest of all the iBox track RMCs that I've ridden. Each of the two segments, while having good elements, felt extremely short, and that long slow lift hill in between them in 100-degree dry heat just killed the ride experience for me. On top of that, I also didn't get any duels on either of my two rides, which also hurts it a bit. Taking all that into account, I just don't think the ride experience compared to even the smallest RMCs like Twisted Cyclone. I came in thinking that this would be one of the best small-scale RMCs, and while it didn't live up to that, I still think there is potential here, so I look forward to the day that I can get back out to Magic Mountain and give Twisted Colossus another shot. Starting off the top 3 is Nitro at Six Flags Great Adventure. For years, I'd heard so many people say that this is one of the best B&M hypers out there, and was pretty excited to finally get on it during my visit to Six Flags Great Adventure this year. Even in the back row, I felt little to no airtime throughout the entire layout and ended up coming off ranking at the lowest of all the B&M hypers I've ridden, and it wasn't even close. I keep wondering if I just got a bad ride or something, but I legitimately felt nothing on those airtime hills whatsoever. It was overall just a really big letdown, especially seeing how tall the ride is, so I hope I can get a better ride on it soon. I'll be getting back to Great Adventure this upcoming weekend, so be on the lookout for that video to hear my updated opinion on it. Number 2 is Superman Ride of Steel at Six Flags America. Like I mentioned with Batwing, I rode this many years ago as a kid and loved it so much that I marathoned it over and over again during my family's visit to Six Flags America. This ranking pertains to my most recent visit where the ride severely underwhelmed me in a multitude of ways. For one, I found the restraints to be very uncomfortable and cramped. I don't understand what's with all the extra pieces on it when I imagine that the normal Intamin T-bar would function perfectly fine on this coaster. That is especially considering that the coaster seriously lacked any airtime, with most of the hills feeling like they just weren't very profiled well, with the first drop and first camelback being the worst offenders of this. The only good airtime moment on the ride was the airtime hill after the section of straight track, and aside from that, there just wasn't really any more. Lastly, the coaster was a lot jankier than I remembered it being, and with the restrictive lap bars, you feel every jolt in the track. It was just a very underwhelming experience compared to what I had remembered, and ended up not even being a top 3 coaster in the park for me. And now, topping my list at the number 1 spot is Max Force at Six Flags Great America. I'm someone who's always loved launch coasters and has been willing to rank them highly even if they're shorter rides, with Stormrunner and Top Thrill Dragster being some notable examples. Going into my trip to Great America, I had high hopes for Max Force being the fastest accelerating coaster on the continent, and ended up coming off feeling very underwhelmed. The initial punch of the launch was great, but since it accelerates so fast, the feeling is not sustained at all, and thus I felt like it let up too soon, leaving something to be desired. The rest of the layout wasn't bad, but also wasn't anything spectacular, and had one of the shortest feeling ride experiences I've ever seen. The launch heavily contrasts from a ride like Top Thrill Dragster, with that ride having a launch that on paper doesn't accelerate as fast, but also lasts over twice as long. And even with something like Stormrunner that has a much more comparable top speed, just had a better overall feeling launch while also having a better layout. I expected Max Force to be top 3 or even top 2 in the park, but I ended up ranking it 7th after all was said and done. And that about wraps it up. I feel as though it's possible that I've just gotten some bad rides on these coasters, and I usually like to stay positive, so I'm hopeful that I'll be able to give all these coasters another shot eventually to get some better rides on them. I'll be coming out with my list about coasters that positively surprised me in the near future, so make sure to like this video and subscribe so you can see that video when it comes out and see more rankings and coaster content. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you next time.